why did the China spying trial collapse? Now, the country's top prosecutor, the Director of Public Prosecution, says that evidence couldn't be obtained from ministers, referring to China as a national security threat. The Prime Minister says they had to draw on the past government's assessment, which called China an epoch-defining challenge. But the former Tory leader Ian Duncan Smith, who launched the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, told us on Times Radio that's just not true.
The Prime Minister is not telling the truth, because what is absolutely clear is that, first of all, he didn't have to rely on the last government, but if he was, this was the clear policy just before they were arrested and then put forward for prosecution. And the very fact that they refused to give any statement to the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions, on this matter, show that they were running away from this.
Now, the former Director of Public Prosecutions, Max Hill, explained to me the impact that the recent Bulgarian spy trial may have had.
Something that's happened in the intervening period is that the Court of Appeal in the Bulgarian spy case has given further assistance on how you look at the definition of an enemy under the terms of the 1911 Act.
The former DPP Max Hill. Now, we're joined on the line by Sir Richard Dearlove, the former head of MI6. Salute to you, Sir Richard.
Hello, John.
Hi, can I just welcome? Can I ask you first of all then, in your view, could the government have testified that China is a threat to British national security, is a potential enemy, and allowed that trial to go ahead?
Well, of course they should. I mean, it's either a cock-up in terms of the lawyers getting in a muddle and not doing anything because the legislation has changed. But it seems to me pretty straightforward. And I mean, let's face it, we've had the Parliamentary Oversight Committee for the intelligence agencies saying in a report that China's a threat to national security. You've had the Director General of the Security Service standing up and giving a public statement along the same lines. You've had a joint news conference by the chief of the chief. Sorry about that. The chief of SIS and the head of CIA making the same point. So, I mean, it's extraordinary, and you know either. And I hate to think the government has been cowed by the Chinese government, by the Chinese Communist Party, into sidestepping the issue.
And when you hear Keir Starmer saying that this alleged spying took place under the last government, using the last government's classification of the threat from China, so the prosecution couldn't go ahead on a changed definition, is that just false? Ian Duncan Smith says it's a lie.
Well, I think Ian Duncan Smith is probably right. It's just ridiculous. I mean, the idea that China's not a threat to national security when it's acting in this manner is completely absurd. It's sort of inexplicable. And to try and pass the blame back to the previous government. Look, even under the old legislation, the Official Secrets Act, okay, you have the phraseology an enemy, but all you have to do is to prove damage to national security. And if the Chinese are recruiting two staffers inside Parliament to report on what's going on inside Parliament, that seems to me a clear threat to the UK's national security.
Right. So, look, the security services, about which you know a great deal, were told, he reported that they wanted this prosecution to go ahead. So one imagines they certainly considered that a prosecution was a viable option.
Of course they did. And I think people inside the Commons who deal with the Commons security, as far as I understand, are spitting tacks about this because, it was a shut and closed case as far as they were concerned. Okay. And what I'm saying is the evidence was incredibly strong against these two, having been suborned by Chinese, one of the Chinese services. I mean, that's quite complicated, which service it was in China that had actually sort of recruited them and was paying them if they were being paid. But I mean, what's happened is unthinkable. And I think this should absolutely be looked into. But the other thing I would say is that, look, it isn't double jeopardy. The case could be reopened because they haven't been tried. No. And I think they ought to go back and think again and go ahead with the prosecution.
Okay, so you want the Director of Public Prosecutions to tell the government, look, you've given us advice. We're told the Prime Minister's security advisor, Jonathan Powell, was instrumental in all of this, and say, look, we want you to think again, which is potentially embarrassing, I suppose, for the government. But you would argue that's the way to go in the interests of justice and security.
Well, it's in the interest of national security. And I mean, I just don't understand what's going on.
It's suggested, Sir Richard, it's suggested that the government is wary of upsetting China when it wants better relations, better trading relations, apart from anything else.
Yeah, the only thing the Chinese understand is reciprocity. If they think this is going to make any difference to trading relations, that's ridiculous. I'm not I don't sort of advocate isolating China at all. Of course, we have to have a commercial relationship with them. But what the Chinese understand is reciprocity. We treat them as they treat us. And that should be absolutely clearly cut and clearly stated. I mean, but there are worrying signs with this government. I mean, the Chagos deal, I'm sorry to bring it up, but, that in itself is a concession to China, which I find quite extraordinary. And, there are other straws in the wind as well. We don't need to ingratiate ourselves with China in order to have a trading relationship with them. They need that as much as we need it.
Yeah, I should be clear. The government does not accept, the Prime Minister does not accept for a moment this decision to see the case. Founder was based on any commercial consideration. He says it's a matter of following the laws and the classifications in place at the time, but we're hearing the arguments disputing the real reason for all of that. I mean, given that the classification of China as a threat has now changed, do you believe that there's anything like a free license for spying on China's behalf?
Well, I mean, the Chinese will be encouraged by this because it means that they can risk relationships with British citizens or British residents that have, let's say, a security dimension, and will think or believe that the government will be reluctant to pursue or prosecute, and therefore they'll be encouraged by this result. Look, I think the most likely explanation, I hope it is this is a legal cock-up, but a legal cock-up of considerable dimensions, which the government should not have, allowed to happen.
Yeah, although you will know Jonathan Powell, now the National Security Advisor, he does seem to be very much at the centre of all this.
He does indeed seem to be a very, very frequent visitor to China, which slightly worries me.
In what way, Sir Richard, does that worry you?
Well, because I think that this government have been courting relationships with China and may be susceptible to pressure. I mean, I don't know. Rachel Reeves has been there, came back with virtually no deals that looked to justify the visit. As I say, the Chinese understand one thing, pragmatic reciprocity and commercial value. They're a mercantile nation. We trade as well. But you don't need to make any compromises on our side on national security. And of course, the other impending issue is planning permission for this massive new Chinese embassy on the site of the Royal Mint in the city.
All right, Sir Richard Dearlove, thank you for coming on the programme this afternoon.